My name is Nicole Jones, and I'm the marketing coordinator here at CopyPress. If you have any questions at all while Sonia and Sean are speaking, you can type them into the chat window in GoToWebinar, and they can get back to them at the end of the webinar when we have a short Q&A.
So we called it the art and science of optimized content because search engine optimization, but beyond search engine optimization, actually just getting people to your website, traffic, getting the right people to come see your message is very much a question of there's an art part and there's a science part. And so today, for the most part, I'm going to cover art, and our great SEO expert and CFO, Sean Jackson, is going to talk science because that's kind of his area. Starting with just the idea that search engine optimization, content marketing, and social media marketing are not three different things. And people talk, I have businesses ask me all the time, you know, I have limited budget, which one of these should I be focusing on? And the answer is, you know, all of them in an integrated way. So don't try and do content marketing that has no social or SEO role, because that's not helpful. But at the same time, if you're trying to do SEO in some kind of silo that has nothing to do with your social media strategy, that has nothing to do with your content strategy, you're probably wasting a lot of time and money, and you could probably be working more effectively. So Sean and I are going to give you some of the key points you need to think about, the key mindsets, the key techniques. So good time to welcome Sean. Sean, always great to talk with you.
Thank you very much, Sonia, and a big appreciation to Nicole and the rest of the team from CopyPress for being here today. We're very excited.
Yeah. Sean and I, you guys should know, are giant, ridiculous geeks about this, so this is like, we have a weird idea of fun. I realize that. So going to that theme of art and science, if you're gonna create optimized content, in other words, content that's working in all three of these realms, the place you start is with the writer. You need to start with somebody who knows how to create content that people want to read. And this, you know, again, is one of the biggest sort of issues. Now, some of you on this call are that person. You know how to do good blog content. You know how to do content people like to read. You know how to write for your audience. So if that's you, that's fantastic, and you're very fortunate, and you have actually a kind of a rare skill that's more and more valuable. If that's not you, if you are not a great writer, you're not confident about your writing, you need to start thinking about how to get some writers into your team who can create the kind of content that people find interesting and engaging and enjoyable, and that teaches them something they care about. I'm going to talk more specifically about that later. One place I've hired a lot of writers in my day. If you're on a real budget and it's tight, rather than trying to do the outsourcing on the lowest common denominator Fiverr kind of website, I would suggest look to your local university or college and look for creative writing majors, particularly if you can get somebody who has an MFA, which is a Master in Fine Arts, an MFA candidate in creative writing or screenwriting or playwriting. Those people know how to write to move an audience. And the rest of what we're going to talk about today, you can teach them. And so that is like my little secret tip for finding people that you can groom into being really, really amazing content creators. And if you're the writer and you're the creative, then today we're going to talk about how you can use some tools to make yourself super SEO and optimization savvy and do all kinds of brilliant things. So we start with the writer. We start with somebody who knows how to create words people want to read, because that's the hard part. I will give you some tips, and then we teach the process of how to create optimized content. And so I'm going to hand things over to Sean, because the tool that Sean's team created, Scribe, is a tool for doing exactly that, for taking good words and then teaching a process that helps you very, very gently optimize the words so that search engines know how to see them, help you optimize for social, help you optimize for all kinds of things. So Sean, take it away.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being here today again, and as the co-creator of the Scribe product, we were certainly influenced heavily by the needs of writers. And so I think that's the first thing to understand about Scribe in the current version 4 that we just released out this quarter, is this idea that it is designed for the writing types, not for the heavy analytical SEO types. This is one reason, for instance, that we manifest the Scribe technology in a variety of different places, including the very popular WordPress platform. So while we're going to be spending a lot of time in WordPress today, but realize that Scribe also has a web version, and in the coming months you're going to see other iterations of Scribe that are, again, geared towards the writer. So the overview that we want to talk about is this idea that there is a process, there is a stage. If you are a writer, you can teach that, you can learn and be taught how to go through these stages. And you'll see them here on the right-hand side of the screen for today's presentation, this idea of this plugin from Scribe inside of your WordPress space so that you can then go and do 3 very specific steps. And the first step, of course, is keyword research. Sonia, what about keyword research? Why is that the first step?
Yeah, and I find when I talk to writers about keyword research, they immediately find something else to do. There's like something really exciting on Facebook that calls their attention because the perception is that keyword research is boring and technical, and it involves some kind of really hard to use tool that you have to pay a fortune for. So we're going to talk about keyword research without wanting to just kill yourself. First thing you need to know about keyword research is it's not artificial. And this one kind of confuses people. A lot of writers think, well, keyword research is about finding a bunch of artificial, kind of lame-sounding phrases. Keyword research is about finding the words people type into, real people, right? Real audience members that are going to come to your website. What are they typing in to a search engine, probably Google, to find you? What are their actual words? And any copywriter will tell you, if you can find the language of your prospects, if you can find out so that they call something, a pop or a soda, there's all kinds of differences in how people use terms, and English has so many synonyms. If you can find the exact language that your audience is using when they're thinking about these topics and when they're looking for a solution, you have a huge advantage in your copywriting. So the first thing is keyword research is important. Actually, even if search is not an important part of your strategy, you still want to know the words, the specific terms people use to talk and think about your topic. But of course, if you're going to create content and you're going to do social, then search is going to tend to follow along. So Scribe will help you find those words, that natural language people are typing into the search engine. And Sean will show you, how that tool works. It's actually very painless, not technical.
So from that, let's go ahead and see how it actually works. Inside of WordPress, again, we have our plugin installed. We have it inside of our post and pages, as well as custom post and page types. And let's start off with keyword research. You'll see on the right-hand side here, we have an input box. So let's go ahead and start typing. So as you'll notice, as I start typing, right below the input box, you'll see some suggestions there. This is the same type of suggestions you would see if you were using Google to start your query process. So then again, trying to help you see from the very first moment ideas that Google has or suggestions that Google has. So I want to research first-time home buyers, and again, I can see maybe there are other terms that I want to look at. Maybe I want to research something different. So that's kind of step one in the process. But more importantly is the second step. Now I actually want more data. I've got the idea, I've got the term, and so now as a writer, I really want to see a couple of things, right? I want to see, for instance, what are other ideas around first-time home buyers? What are other terms, what are other suggestions that are coming from things like Bing, from Google, from Word Tracker, from some of the other places, so that I have a keyword suggestion list available for me to again, research ideas. You'll notice, for instance, always makes me laugh, sometimes people put home buyers as one word. Interesting. But it's not just interesting because of the suggestions. I also want to know how popular a term is, right? And obviously a term that is very, very popular, is something maybe I want to consider. So we put into the interface this gradation, this scaling, if you will, to show things that probably have some popularity, that have large popularity, that have extremely large popularity. And we can see that clearly reflected in the interface. But that's not enough, is it? Because, again, I don't want to just go after words that are extremely popular. I may also want to go after words where people are not writing a lot about it. That's this idea of finding an opportunity. This was the one thing that we built that really got me the most excited, was this idea that not only did I look at popularity, which there's many ways to find the popularity of a term, but also what is the amount of competition out there? How many people are writing and targeting that term? And in this case, the less competitive it is, the better it is for you, right? So that terms that people aren't writing a lot about, maybe there's a better chance for you to rank. So we have this column here called competition, where again we can see that terms like house are extremely popular as well as extremely competitive. But there are some niche terms out there that have very low competition and maybe lower popularity, but maybe that's a niche that we can go after. But this is just one part of the process, right? We probably also want to hear the conversation that's going on Twitter. So that for all of those terms that we just were presented there, we probably also want to see what people are saying on sites like Twitter or maybe Google+, which, again, a lot of content marketers are now aggressively using Google+. So we can see, again, how are people using headlines? How are they talking about this? Is there any thing that's new out there that I need to be aware of as I look at these different headline terms out there? And, of course, Google Trends integration as well, so that, again, we're feeling the universe of this. But that's not all, because I also need to understand how difficult is this term in comparison to those that are out there, right? I need a little bit more detail on the competitive factors or the things that I have to address when I'm writing. So, for instance, we can click on something like first-time buyers, and we can see the usage of this term on our site compared to those that are already ranking on a search engine for it. This is what we call the keyword detail screen, so that we can see the content on my site compared to those that are already ranking. I can see the amount of links to my site for those that are already ranking for this term. I can see the page authority as reported from SEO Moz on how my authority compares to those that are ranking. And then, of course, I can also see the social media shares, how many links or likes and retweets, etc., that I have compared to those that are ranking, so that we can amalgamate that into an overall score of how difficult a term would be. From 0 being you're probably already ranking for it now, to 100, which means you are probably going to have a very difficult time of even ranking in comparing your site for this term against those that are already ranking. So this kind of gives you a roadmap. How much content do I need to generate? Links, authority, shares. But that's not all. Because also, as a writer, I'm probably pretty interested in some demographic information on this, right? I want to know, is the audience that searches for this more male or female in gender? What is their typical age? What is the cost per click? Is this a very competitive term people are buying, or is it something that people aren't spending a lot of money for? And, of course, the actual search volume. So that, again, when I want to get more details as a writer, I can quickly come in and compare my site for this term against those that are ranking and get a lot more detail about the types of people that are searching for this. And finally, if this is the term that I want to target, if I want to make sure this is the thing that I want to zero in on, I just have to click one button and save this to make sure that I know, and the analysis that we'll show you later knows that this is the term I'm really looking to target. So Sonia, with that, I'll turn back over of the elements of keyword research, because now we've done it. What do we do next?
So we talked, as part of that whole art and science thing, about things that, writing content that people want to read, and writing content that people want to share. One of the things that if you have a writer, or if you're the writer, you can train is how to write better headlines. And it's one of the best things you can do that will make your content work better. And we're not at this point going to be talking necessarily about the SEO of headlines. We're going to be talking about the art of headlines, and then Sean's going to tell you how SEO plays into that. So the first thing is your headline. Let's say we're working in WordPress. You know, your headline at the top of your post, it needs to work for human readers first and foremost. That needs to be your priority. Now we have, over at Copyblogger, we have tons of advice for you on headlines. So if you're not familiar with Copyblogger, copyblogger.com, just look for, we have tutorials on all kinds of things like SEO copywriting, and one of the tutorials we have is on copywriting and specifically on headlines. One of the things we find, just informally sharing some tips with you, that works really well is a headline that has a benefit to the reader always does better than a headline that's clever or interesting. And so a lot of creative people will go for the curiosity headline, and they'll have a headline like, you know, it's something clever and cute and cool, and, you know, what the Parthenon, you know, can teach you, and this kind of thing that has absolutely nothing to do
What
with
Depeche Mode can teach you about writing.
Yeah. So what Depeche Mode can teach you about writing is like, okay, because you have a certain, well, I wonder what they can teach me about writing. What Depeche Mode can teach you about getting more web traffic, there's a benefit. Getting more web traffic is a benefit in the headline. That will work like 10 times better. And when in doubt, keep the benefit, kill the Depeche Mode. So kill the curiosity element if it doesn't fit, if you can't cram it in there, if it's getting it's just too long, you know, it's 4 lines long already. The benefit is the most important part of your headline. What's it going to do for the reader? What does the reader get out of reading this article? And make sure it's a benefit that they care about. So for example, in the health community, most people, when we talk about health, what we're really talking about is losing weight and looking better. That's actually what people want. Most people don't care much about their health, really. You know, they'd rather not die early, but they don't think about it much. It's not something that they, it's not something, you know, except for very certain populations. Now, if your population has diabetes, then managing your blood sugar is a benefit because they're very, very aware. That's a benefit they care about. The general population, managing your blood sugar, I don't care. I want to look good in a bathing suit. I want to, so really think about what matters to them, not what matters to you. And make sure you've got a benefit in just about every headline that you create. Now there is a little something called the title tag. And any, you know, any decent WordPress theme or WordPress SEO plugin is going to let you adjust the title tag. And so I'll let Sean, because if I explain it, I'll say something silly that's not quite perfect. So I'll let Sean explain the title tag to you.
Surely. In your web page, you have things that are displayed to the user and things that are displayed to the search engines. And one of those elements is called the HTML title tag. The title tag is what appears inside of a search result page on Google. And sometimes the meta description will appear as a snippet underneath that title tag. But realize, and the way I like to think about it is, while this in WordPress is for the human side, this for the bots out there, Google, Bing, etc., is what they tend to digest first. It is not displayed to the user when they visit your page, but of course is displayed to them to get to your page from a search engine. So the nice thing is, as a writer, I can come in and think about what is going to appeal to the human side, but also what is going to be that ad, that thing that I want someone to click on when they are at Google or Bing and come in and entice them back to my site to further read through this. So with that said, it's an important part of the scribe process because we do have in the plugin for WordPress this ability to integrate with all of the popular SEO tools out there. This could be WordPress SEO or all-in-one SEO, or of course in the Genesis framework, many of the frameworks out there will have their own ability for you to edit this title and meta description. That's very important because Scribe needs this, because we look at the entire content stream, your headlines, your body content, your HTML title, and your meta description, so that we can then do the next step. And the next step in this process is that while we have worked on this piece, we want to see two different things. We want to make sure that we're following the rules of good basic SEO. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we want to make sure that our title element down here includes that keyword we were wanting to focus on. Because remember, as Sonia said, the art is going to be in the headline and the body content. But we want to make sure that search engines can understand what you're talking about. And so by putting this in, we want to make sure is the page well crafted. That's what we call the page score. But we also, because of the updates that Google did recently, want to make sure that this content resides on a site that is aligned with the content. So let's go ahead and get into it. So once we put into this information on the page, we can then click the Analyze button. And by clicking the Analyze button, we then can see a lot more detail about how a bot or a search engine could potentially understand this content. And we first go with this analysis of the site and the content together. Scribe is the only tool that not only inspects the site, the structure of your content, but it also looks at how this content applies to the site that it's on. This was a very important part of the recent Google Panda and Penguin updates you may have heard about, where they were penalizing sites that had content that was not aligned with the overall site, since their definition of quality is this master idea that sites should be and content should be about the same thing. So with this tool, with Scribe, we can quickly see that on a scale of 0 to 100, that this particular piece of content aligns with the site from 0 to 100, with 50 being anything above 50 is probably a better alignment, so that we can see very quickly that this gets a 65, which means this content is probably aligned with the site. It fits with the site, but it's not a perfect fit for it, right? Well, how do we know this? Well, this is something new that no one else has, which is this keyword graph feature. And the keyword graph is this idea of comparing the content to the site. So we take all of the terms that we find inside of your content, and then we analyze your site for those terms so that we map them with the x-axis, or this bottom grid right here, representing your style of writing. How well are you writing for search engines? And then on the y-axis, or the left axis over here, how are those terms used on your site? So in a visual representation, we can see that the idea of first-time home buyers is well written in the site. It aligns very nicely on our copywriting style, and it also is well used on the site, but probably not as much as the term Calgary. And so without even reading what we just wrote, we could probably make a very good assumption that this piece of content is about first-time home buyers in the city of Calgary. And again, with the keyword graph, it's a visual representation of all of the terms found in your content and how those terms are used on your site. And of course, if you have any questions, you can click on the little plus sign to tell you more about that graph. And for those that want a lot more detail, for those that want more information about this content and the terms found in this content and how they correspond to the site that I'm publishing to, we have the keyword details graph below here, which shows you all of the terms we automatically find inside of this content, their respective grade on this grid, as well as their rank. And this is a very, very important part of what we built with Scribe from version 1 on, was this idea of not every word on a page is treated the same. There are different ideas that you're trying to manifest there to a search engine, and certainly we rank them so that terms that are primary are more than likely what is the most important part of this particular document, and terms that are significant are probably used very frequently throughout. So again, if you want more information about the words we find, we clearly delineate them in the keyword details, showing you their grades, their ranks, their prominence, their frequency, and their density. Now, one point about density, because this seems to come up quite a bit. Density is not a ranking factor, but frequency tends to be. We include density as a function of an analysis, but frequency is an important part of all search engines because they do need to see how terms are used on a page and how frequently they are. If you've ever done a page that had Google AdSense on it, you know that terms that are frequently used on there inevitably will lead to better Google AdSense ads. Frequency is a part of information retrieval science, and we put it in here, but we also augment that with the prominence of a term. How prominently are you using it? Are you using the beginning of it or at the end of it? And with those factors, we rank them. So that's really about the first level analysis, but it goes deeper than that, doesn't it? Because we also, as writers, want to know, are we doing the basics of good SEO copywriting? I don't know what it is, but every writing shop out there tends to have a piece of paper out there that they hand to writers that said, okay, if you're going to write for search and social, here's some rules that you need to follow. Put the keyword in the title. Put the keyword frequently there. Do this, do that. We automated that for you so that, again, you can check your page, quickly seeing a score from 0 to 100, with 100 being the best, to say you have followed the rules. And these rules are based on best practices as outlined by copyblogger.com and based on extensive research when we were building the tool 4 years ago on what was and was not working to help search engines better understand this content. But not only do we score this, if you didn't get 100, if you were slightly below that, we also give you ways to improve this particular score by adjusting the keywords. Maybe you want a different keyword out there. So you can say that maybe I want the word Calgary to be more emphasized than what Scribe is finding. Again, we can give you that analysis and recommendations. And then finally in this tool, tags. If you're using tags, they're great. They're a good way to classify information, and we made it very easy to not only take the terms that we find inside of the document so that you can add them to your post, but we also find related terms. So if you're creating up or working on a fairly extensive site in WordPress, you now have a fairly intelligent tagging solution to classify your post and pages based not only on what was found in them, but also, of course, other semantically related items. But at the end of the day, as a writer, what really matters is this quick analysis. Did I follow the rules that they tell me to follow to write a good page for SEO reasons? But more importantly, is this page that I'm writing aligning with the site it's going to be published to? That's very important, because if you're creating up a post about subdural hematoma on a site that talks about copywriting, there's a misalignment of the content in the site that you're publishing to, and the site score will quickly tell you whether this document aligns with the place that you're going to publish on. And one other aspect of this, because I do want to talk a little bit about this idea of making it more easy for search engines to find what you are working on. Not only do you need to have content that is easily understood by these search engines, but you also want to help them find it a little bit easier. And that is where our internal link building tool. I'm going to tell you one of the things that I think a lot of people forget is that if I'm publishing to a site, there are pages on that site now that have some traffic to them, that have some links to them. And by creating links from those pages to this brand new page that I'm working on, I actually make it easier for search engines to understand what I'm talking about. So for instance, all of the terms that were found through the Scribe analysis are listed here for you, so that then you can quickly come in and see the top 5 pages on your site based on their authority, meaning do they have links coming to them from authoritative sources on the web, as well as their actual link count. So that now, if I want to give this page I'm working on an extra boost to make it easy for search engines to find it in the context of my site, I just had to click on one of those terms, and now we can see that everywhere in yellow is probably a place I should create a link from to this new page I was working on. So this is something that, again, I really think that as a writer, you don't need to worry about the reasons per se, but I do think it helps to say there are pages that we have today on our site that are talking about whatever term I'm looking for. And it would help search engines and users as well if I go to my site and create up links from these existing pages to this new page that I'm working on. So that really, in a nutshell, is a little bit about how we analyze your content to help you make sure you're following the best practice guidelines, making sure it aligns with your site, and then giving you a little extra boost by identifying pages on your site that would make sense for you to link from those pages to this new page that you're working on. So that really covers the basics of the scribe from an editorial process is being a part of the writing metaphor. But there's more out there, and a big part of that is the leverage of existing social media sites.
Yeah, and social media is a tricky topic. I mean, we were actually talking a little bit before the webinar started because social media is a lot of what makes what we do so intimidating because it's always changing. And so, you know, Facebook changes the rules, and Twitter changes their interface, and you know, is Google Plus actually getting any traffic from anybody who's not a marketer? And all these questions that we have about social. What I'm going to talk about today are some basic principles that work because, you know, you guys have to realize that it's not going to be Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google Plus forever. In 5 years, we might have 4 replacements for those, you know. This is very fluid, but the same things tend to work over time. So the things that tended to work in MySpace are tending to work on Facebook. And the things that tend to work, you know, the principles that tend to work, for example, headlines. A great headline worked just as well in Dig as it does on Pinterest. A headline is a headline is a headline. Headlines make content more shareable. One of the things you need to know about social is that increasingly search engines are looking at what's happening in social sites like Twitter and especially Google+, because as we know from the name Google+, it is run by Google. If, you know, I think only a very idealistic person would think that they don't weigh their own social platform more heavily, partly just because that's where they have the data, you know. They can see everything that goes on in Google+. The more sharing you get in Google+, the more search benefit you're going to get from Google, you know, from Google+. It's weighted. But social media gives signals not just to search engines, but to human readers that this is something worth looking at. So if I see that something has been, if I see your post and you've got a social sharing button and it's been tweeted 1,700 times, I'm just going to think unconsciously, well, this is probably a good post. It's been tweeted 1,700 times. Obviously, this is something I should look at, you know. This has worth. Similarly, if you see a post come into you, you're on Facebook doing your thing, and somebody shares a post, you're going to think, well, my friend shared that post. My friend is smart. I bet I would like that too, and you'll click through. So social media gives signals to search engine, but it also gives signals to people that this is content worth paying attention to. And the better you do in social sharing, that will just automatically tend to give you benefits. And so let's just assume that in 5 to 10 years, the entire landscape of everything will change. So all the algorithms will change on the search engines, and we'll have new platforms as long as your fundamentals are sound. And we're going to end the presentation with kind of my key mindset shift for you that'll help your content do better in social and everywhere else. But the 2 big factors are cookie content, which we're going to talk about at the end, content that's beneficial to the reader, and then the other one is headlines. If you've got valuable content, it has value to readers and it has a good headline on it, it's going to do well on the new, you know, the new platform. Now, you know, of course you're going to have to adapt. Pinterest is a visual platform. If your content has no visuals, it's never going to do well on Pinterest. It could be the best headline and the best, most brilliant post in the world. It's not optimized for Pinterest. So obviously you use your common sense, but that's just, again, a matter of common sense. Sean, do you want to talk about Scribe and social? Because Scribe actually has some really neat tools for helping us be kind of strategic about social and how we're using it.
So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the extended features of Scribe. What we saw previously was information available within a post. So we could go in our post and handle the three primary ideas that we were just discussing. We also have in the new version of Scribe, you'll notice that under this administrative feature, we have this Site Connections tool. And Site Connections was some functionality that we took out of V3 and extended upon and placed at its own separate point, because what we wanted to do was help you in the social media landscape. And social media being defined for us as blogs or sites that allow commenting on, as well as Google+, Twitter, etc. So in the Site Connections tool, you put in your particular keyword that you're looking for, and one of the things that you will see is external sites that are out there that do have some form of commenting capability to them. Now, of course, this will vary quite a bit, but what we try to do is identify sites that are strong in their page authority and find any public information that we can related to the contact name. Now, sometimes we can do this and sometimes we can't. Again, people have public information out there, their telephone, their name, their email address, and in other cases we have to go a little bit further to get their links from outside sources so that, again, I can start to find places and sites that allow some form of commenting, be them blogs, be them websites with a comment feature, being sites that allow you to contribute content to them, so that, again, you can identify them very quickly. The next aspect, of course, is it's not just blog sites out there in social media. We also want to look for people on Twitter, Google+, etc. So by putting in this term, we can quickly come in and see authoritative users on Google+ and on Twitter, again, based on their Clout score, so that we can see in the case of these two fairly high Clout scores. We will be integrating in Clout for Google+. As well, so that, again, I can quickly come in and see these are people that are talking about this particular term on social media today, so that I can see what they have recently posted about this particular keyword or keywords that I'm looking for, and then by clicking these links, go out there and reach out to them to find them, etc. So I do think that with the social media tool, you can quickly find people to connect with. But there's an art to connecting, because all we're doing here really is providing you the data of who to go out and connect to. It takes a little bit more of art to reach them.
Yeah, and this is not a quick fix. You know, we're not going to tell you, oh, you know, here's the one-step process to reach the top most influential people in your topic. Influential people are busy by nature. They have a lot of people who want to get their attention. The best way to get the attention of connectors, once you know who they are, these are the people who can connect you with other audiences. The best way to get the attention of connectors is to have interesting opinions about what they write about. So if you're trying to get placement on maybe a guest post or a link or a tweet from the #1 blogger about gluten-free travel in Europe, then the best way to get that person's attention is to write something really interesting about your top 5 gluten-free restaurants in Paris. And if you have that, if you are writing something valuable and interesting in their topic, that's what gets their attention. So the first thing is, you know, quality, have something interesting to say. And I think that you guys are too smart to fall for this kind of, you know, going out. I mean, some people will try and go out to influential content and then run it through like an article spinner and post that. Okay, that's a great way to reach their attention in a very negative way that makes them think you're an idiot. So don't do that. Really write something. Remember we talked about start with the writer. Write something worth reading. Write something really interesting. Social media, you know, Twitter, even if your customers, your audience is not on Twitter and Google+, sometimes those are great places to find your connectors, and they're worth your time to go socialize, be interesting, to make your network connections with connectors. This was a big hidden factor in Brian Clark launching CopyPress to a very popular site actually quite quickly. It's because he spent a lot of time behind the scenes reaching to connectors, having something worth saying about what they were writing about, and just making nice and being friendly on social media. Now, it takes time. Again, they're busy. It takes time to get their attention. So be friendly, be polite, be where they are. If they don't hang on Twitter but they love Google+, go hang on Google+. And put interesting things in front of them. And keep in mind that not everything you put in front of them has to be written by you. If you didn't write that gluten-free restaurant in Paris article, but you read it and you thought it was brilliant, you know, send it to that person and say, hey, did you see this? I thought it was really well done. Get yourself in front of them with things that are relevant to their interests. It doesn't hurt also if you pay attention, and this is where social media is brilliant. So you know that Amber Nasland over at Sedera Works, very influential social media marketing consultant, very smart, very busy, lots of fans wanting her attention. But if you hang out with her at all, you quickly learn that she has a real love for pit bulls. And you can get to Amber real quick with a wonderful, heartwarming story about a pit bull rescue of a wonderful dog. And now the dog is in a family and everybody's happy. So you can find out people's non-topic interests and bond with them over that too. Social media is the most totally genius set of inventions ever for finding influential people, learning what they care about, and then just creating relationships by being interesting, by talking about what they find relevant, and being a good egg. Be a good egg. John Morrow has a really good course on guest blogging. He has an entire module on being a nice guy, being a nice person. Apparently this needs teaching now, which is sort of, you know, a depressing statement about the state of humanity. But some people think that the best way to get attention of connectors is like to be really controversial and you know, show up all the time and say, I think that's, you know, yeah, I tried that. I think it's bullshit. This is a really good way to get their attention. It's also a really good way to just make them associate you with like pain and annoyance. It is not a good way to get people to link to you, to tweet your content, to make guest posts available. Just a pro tip there. So we're getting close to the end of the hour. I want to quickly touch on a little bit of a mind shift set for a lot of writers on what makes for good content, because we keep talking about it has to be high quality, it has to be shareable. I'm going to talk a little bit about a way of thinking about content that's going to help you create that. Even if actually you're not necessarily, you know, a lot of great content writers will never get published in the New Yorker. It is really not about being, you know, Malcolm Gladwell and having a beautiful prose style. It is really about creating something people want to read. And that, fortunately, does not take Malcolm Gladwell level talent or experience. I call it cookie content, and I wrote a post on Copyblogger called How to Create Better Content, Treat Your Readers Like Dogs. And what I mean by that is, if you want to get a dog to do something for you, then let's see, you want to teach your dog to sit, then you put the dog in front of you and you encourage him by hook or by crook to sit down, and then you give him a cookie. You give him a reward and you pat him on the head and you tell him he's a good, good dog. The dog says, okay, when I sit, when this human makes this sound, I get things I like. I get rewards. I get positive reinforcement. And so the next time I hear the human make that sound, I'm going to try doing that again because I really enjoyed the experience last time. It puts the dog on your side. You guys are part of the same pack. You guys are part of the same team. You have the same goals. You do the same thing with readers with your content. And so if you think content marketing is about, you know, pitch, 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 ad, push, you're going to, that's negative reinforcement. Your readership, your audience is going to look at that and say, you know what, every time that guy emails me, it's a pitch. I don't really need a pitch today. I get no benefit from that. And they move along. Whereas if in your email content, 9 times out of 10, it's something that they value, something that gives them a good experience, you are training them using positive reinforcement to click through on your emails and to click through on your Facebook links and your Twitter links and all the rest of it. So thinking about that cookie content, what makes cookie content? It's valuable, so it gives them something they care about, like a recipe, a nutrition tip, a travel tip, tips. Think tips. You know why top 10 tips posts are work so well because they are perfect cookie content. Cookie content is digestible, so it's not necessarily a manifesto. It's something quick reward. One thing I can take away and use now. And it's, if you can make it entertaining, if you have a good sense of humor, do it. Because again, that creates a reward for the reader when they're consuming the content. And another thing that many really gifted content creators and writers do not understand is format this sucker so that it's easy to read and look at. So I can take something that's intellectually rather dense and not necessarily easy reading. If I put lots of line breaks in it and subheaders so that it makes it just easier to kind of get at a glance what it's about, and I put it on a good-looking web design with some white space, it doesn't look like, you know, your website was created in like 2001. Like a MySpace page with blinking Rastafarian, you know, animated characters at the top of it. All of that makes the content experience more enjoyable, and all of that will contribute to making the content more shareable. I will tell you that if a brilliant article is on a page, but the page design is hard to read, ugly, spammy looking, or the content is like in gray 10-point type on a gray background, I won't share it because the experience of reading it is not enjoyable, even though the information is very valuable. So think about that as it's a mindset shift to, does this content reward the reader for clicking through to it? And the more you think about your content in that way, the better. Pair that with good headlines and you will be a good content creator, even if, you know, your prose is not E.B. White, but, you know, as long as you can say what you mean and mean what you say, put a little sense of humor in it, format it well, make it useful, and keep it digestible, you will get good reader engagement. So I do want to leave some time. I don't want to shortchange anybody. You can enter your questions in the chat box. You can also try entering them in the question box. I think we can read them. There's a question about Sean and I as panelists. Can we see the questions? But I bet we can. So we would love to know, you know, your questions. What do you struggle with? What do you have issues with? You know, anything that you're not clear about, fire it at us, because that's what we're here for, is to help you guys out. And don't be shy.
Nicole?
Hi guys. It looks like there aren't questions coming through. There's been some you know, comments on your speaking, just on loving John Morrow, and then the article you were talking about being a good article, and then a couple, you know, questions at the beginning of the webinar. But other than that, I haven't seen anything else come through. Like they said,
Lay it on us, guys. We're here. We've got 10 minutes, and we would love to answer your questions. You can
I
ask.
do want to follow up on something
Yeah,
that Sonia did say, though, and while hopefully this will help some people, the art of SEO, and I've been like curious, I'm just how many people are actually focusing on the social SEO side when they're actually writing. One of the things that I really cannot stress enough in this whole art of creating great content is this idea that keyword research is a huge part of that initial process. You will find especially in Scribe, this idea of finding people who are talking about these things on Twitter and Google+, and spending time reading their work is another important part of trying to get this idea of where you're going to focus the content. The content optimization process, quite frankly, we put a lot of detail in there. At the end of the day, I cannot stress enough that the most important thing about your content, once you handle the art side, is you need to make sure that it is clear to search engines what you are trying to talk about, and put it on a site that is talking about that stuff. It is amazing to me how many times I run into a site where the content is all over the board, and then people question, why is Google not showing anything that I'm writing about? And there's a lot of reasons for that, but not the least of which is your site is scattered and unfocused. So there is somewhat of a discipline to the process to make sure that the content being created is both obviously engaging for people, but more importantly is going to reside on a site that is focused or at least analogous to what you are writing about.
We did have a question come in. Sorry
to
cut you off, Sonia. I just pasted it into the chat box. So
yes. You mentioned recruiting from a local university. Is there a single resource or book to get them started for writing for the web? Sonia?
That's a great, it is a great question, and I think it may be something we create because I think there's a real need for it. This is going to sound so gross, but I really would send them through all the tutorials on copyblogger.com as a free thing you can do. So if you just go to Copyblogger, on the right side there are these tutorials on copywriting, content marketing, SEO copywriting. Just have them spend a half day reading those articles, and they will get a pretty good comprehensive education on, you know, the thought process. And while you're at it, you know, just be familiar with those resources yourself so that you can coach a little bit. You know, make sure that they know how to write a headline with the benefit in the headline. Make sure that they know, and Scribe, again, is a tool you can use. Actually, some SEO firms, it's very interesting, use Scribe as a training tool for their copywriters. So they'll recruit some copywriters, and then they're just like, okay, just put your content through Scribe and, you know, see how good a content score you can get. See how well you can, you know, it's like playing a game. See if you can get your content score up to 100 and notice what that does. And it still has to be readable, but that's the cool thing is Scribe looks at the content like a search engine bot does. And sometimes it's hard for a normal person to put themselves in that point of view. So
I will share one tactic that I've used to find good writers, especially at the interview process, I should say. So not finding, but screening good writers. And then to build on what Sonia said about how agencies are using it. One of the things that always gets me is that if you're looking for a writer to hire, everybody sends a resume over. And
right.
Inevitably, resumes are very boring and not what you need them to look at. So in the past, when I hired a commercial blogger for a friend of mine, the first thing I asked them to do, all the candidates that applied for the position, is I asked them to write a 750-word piece about why they love social media. And in 2 steps, I was able to screen out a vast majority of people that should not have been in the interview process. Because if they couldn't write about social media intelligently, that was one thing. If they didn't really understand social media, then, of course, the content itself would be boring. So one of the screening processes that I've used is just ask them to write something for you that they can repurpose on their site, etc. And then the last step that I did in this commercial blogging process is to screen this candidate who's getting a very, very good position, is I asked them to write something very specific about the company, about this particular thing that they were going to be hired to do, and to post it on their blog site so that we could see how engaged their audience was. And by that final filter, by having them post it on a site themselves that they then took the time to really put out there to the public, and they could say good, bad, or whatever. There was no intention on trying to, get an extra link out of this. But just that process of screening them by their writing style, by their posting style, by the way that they engaged already in social media spaces was a great way to filter people out. To Sonia's point about agencies, I will tell you most of the agencies that are customers will tell you that Scribe is the tool that they use for their writing staff to make sure that those scores are in alignment with the sites and with the page, and more importantly, that those keywords that are being found are what they want that they need for the client work that they're doing. It is amazing to me, even some big-time bloggers like Michael Gray, who goes by the handle Gray Wolf, he said, I use Scribe to make sure my writers, so I don't have to worry that my writers are covering the basics. That I know that if they're using Scribe, I can see the score, I can see the keywords, and I know in a glance that their content is going to align with what I need them to do.
Yes, and Nicole just shared in the chat box, if you were interested in that cookie content post, you can, it goes into that concept in a little more detail. So if you want more details about that mindset and how it works. And I only got one complaint about treating readers like dogs. I was very, very surprised. I think most of us realize we treat our dogs better than we treat each other sometimes.
Do we have any other questions?
A couple more minutes, and you can ask us juicy gossip questions, but we might not answer.
I wanted to add to that training comment about someone wanting resources. CopyPress actually just launched community.copypress.com, and it's a big community training portal. It's our blog. You can join and join our team as a writer. We have a big writing community that helps us with our blog content and just learning more about what we call share bait. So like you were saying, how Michael Gray, like writing about something that everyone else has already said before or that they already know. Like, we look after creating really meaty content, something that has substance. It's not going to be the same regurgitated stuff you hear all over the internet. So community.com